Okay, so welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. Today we are bringing you a fantastic webinar, one that Ryan has been called back due to its extremely high reception last year, and that's on leading with OKRs. Now, for many of you, we're now in the second half. Now, everybody's on a different calendar, but we're in the second half of the year, and this is really a really good time to start reflecting on how this year has gone so far and what are those big goals and objectives that you want to carry on in the next year. So it's almost there, right? Annual planning is going to come really, really fast. So this is a great webinar to not just listen to, but also repeat when you're actually doing this annual planning. All right, Ryan, why don't you move forward? Why don't you quickly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Well, hello, everybody. I am Ryan Cantwell, a principal consultant and trainer here at Productside, and I'm calling in today from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I see we have a lot of people from all over the world, in fact, joining us today, Rina.
Yes, Timothy. I'm also from
Miami.
Miami. Yes, and I see somebody from France. Hi. I was just in Paris a few weeks ago. It is a wonderful, wonderful country. Okay, welcome. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Rina Alexin. I'm the CEO of Productside. I've been with the company now for, oh my gosh, almost 6 years. Can you believe it, Ryan? I can't. And I'm going to be actually introducing a little bit about our company right now. Move to the next slide.
Yep.
So for those of you who don't know us, and I hope all of you do, we at Productside, we pride ourselves on being an outcome-driven product partner. The reason why our clients love working with us is because we come from an approach of delivering outcomes, not just in training or an engagement. And that's why we've really structured our services to be a holistic and complete solution for transformation. So we provide not just training and courses, we really like to get to know our clients with our advisory practice. And so we understand exactly where are the gaps to best practices and then help them along increasing their maturity in both skills and process. And we do it with our invested experts like Ryan here, who just put their heart and soul into every single engagement. All right, so these webinars are really for you. So please stay engaged and ask us questions. There's a couple ways for you to do that. One is directly in chat. Feel free to put and talk to each other, right? Sometimes I even see attendees are chiming in with their perspective. Please feel free to do that. You can also use the Q&A button to ask a question, and I'll be monitoring that while Ryan is giving the actual presentation. If we can, if there's a question that's related to the topic that we are talking about, we'll actually bring it on, but we'll also leave time for Q&A at the end. The most popular question that we get is, can I watch this later? And the answer, of course, is yes. All of our webinars are then posted to our website, and everybody who's registered will get a link to watch the recording after the webinar has ended. I have podcasts on my mind now, Ryan. All right. So for those of you who have not yet joined our LinkedIn group, we have over 60,000 product professionals in our LinkedIn group, and it is quite active. Feel free to join by using the QR code. I think we're also going to be posting it in the chat. But this is a great group for you all to post questions, share best practices. Also, take a look at who else is in there, expand your network, and connect with your peers. Product management is hard, so don't do it alone.
All
All
right.
right. Yes.
So, Rina, I'll take the baton from here if that's okay with you. But I like that sign off, Rina. Product management is hard. I don't think it's a great tagline. Product management is hard. There was the movie that came out like last year that was titled Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I
Yes.
say that's a good tagline for product management too. Everything, everywhere, all at once. It's everything that happens to us all the time. So, speaking of the discipline of product management, we're here to talk about a specific section of that and a tool that product managers can use to hopefully achieve more. And that is the OKR, Objectives and Key Results. We're going to look at some things today, hopefully giving you and building a toolkit on using not only the OKR in both process or in function and principle, but allowing you to be able to do some small things with some of the lessons that OKRs can teach us, even if we don't use them today, which is pretty cool. So we're going to look at the best practices, maybe some of the bad habits, and talk about what makes them great. All right, so to get started, we will launch into the OKR instruction manual, and let's set the stage a little bit from here. And this is how I'm going to do it. I want to introduce everybody to Regan. Regan is a results-driven and passionate product leader, everybody. She is working in a fast-paced environment, and despite her dedication, she spends her days overwhelmed by change. And priorities are shifting left and right, and there is a never-ending stream of urgent issues. And I'm sure all the product managers here can empathize with that. But one day, Reagan learns about OKRs, objectives and key results, and she says, this might be a better way to help me organize. And this concept intrigues her as a potential solution for bringing order to the chaos that she and her team kind of experience regularly. Now, initially, Reagan hesitates. She loves the new idea, but knows that she alone can't change the whole organization. Like, what influence does she have to say, let's do OKRs? And this, being a little bit daunted, she shifts back to her already overwhelming responsibilities, not thinking twice if it's worth the effort. But there is hope, Rina. Regan, it's at this moment she realizes that hey, I think I can take about an hour out of a day and learn a little bit about OKRs and how they might be able to help me. And as she finds out more, she attends a webinar like this one and is inspired that she finds OKRs can be used in small ways. She doesn't have to influence the whole organization. Rather than trying to change everything, she can make some fundamental changes, small things that she can do herself. And it doesn't take long for Regan to see the positive impact of applying those OKR best practices to her day-to-day. She's more organized, sets clear priorities, and measures results, and is able to report on those to her leadership team. So that's now, in the end, she is a leader at the company, and though her bosses take notice and come to her for advice. Her peers are looking at her saying, how do we get to achieve more like Regan does? And we're in a better spot. She has a brave new world now looking at these principles of OKR. So I'm hoping we all today get to experience the same journey that Regan has. So with that, let's look at a little bit of history. Like, what is an OKR? Let's talk about some of the fundamentals and kind of what makes them them. So an OKR is an acronym, of course, for objectives and key results. And if we look at objectives, we'll break it down a little bit further next, but they are very aspirational things. They are often clear and concise, and they're communicating a vision or a strategic goal that the organization is hoping to achieve. And that's aspiration, or that nature behind it, kind of pushes teams beyond their comfort zone, hopefully getting them to take calculated risks and reach for achievement. We're also measuring progress with them, and that's where the key results come in. These things become more quantifiable, and when done right, they're orienting everybody towards achieving an outcome, not necessarily just completing outputs. So by tracking progress, you're able to see the meaningful progress that is made, like towards that actionable and aspirational goal that has been set. And that's kind of what is the magic behind an OKR, the combination of the objective and the key result. And that combination gives us focus. OKRs are meant to connect. They cascade from the top down and kind of push everybody towards a common goal. And that also allows things to be appropriately right-sized for a team within the organization on what they can influence and impact the goals that they connect to. And finally, they motivate action. Because of the connectedness of OKRs and how things cascade from the top down, they're bringing a natural transparency to the organization, both up, down, and across. And this is kind of promoting a level of shared responsibility that delivers context and purpose to the people that are using them to direct their work. And I will say, well, this framework seems rigid in definition, I would like everyone to think of this as we go forward as like a mental map. To make OKRs useful, we don't need to try and influence the whole organization or implement wholesale changes across our company. In fact, we can just simply apply their best practices and improve our own way of working. That's what we want to do. All right, so let's break them down into a little bit more detail. Objectives. So an objective should be clear, inspiring, and easily understood. These objectives serve as a strategic theme and usually a qualitative statement of what needs to be achieved in the organization or from the team's perspective. Those objectives, they should be significant, concrete, and very action-oriented. That's where the motivation comes in, getting people to rally around them and drive the organization forward in the desired direction. So as we look at an objective, we definitely want them to be clear and inspiring, easily understood and motivating. They need to be qualitative in nature, defining what is to be achieved, kind of like looking at that future state. They can be significant and concrete, which is making them important and very well defined, so everybody understands what they are, and also action-oriented, designed to drive progress in that particular direction. And we can look at the example that we have here on the slide. Here we're going to use hiking. I don't know if anyone here is a hiker. We can use hiking. So if we were part of a team, all of us here on the webinar together, and we wanted to plan a hiking trip, we might write the following objectives for ourselves. The first one might sound like, let's reach the top of the highest peak this season. Great, aspirational, we know what we want to do. Second, we might say, and let's ensure all the team members safely reach the summit. So, okay, we're getting a feel and a sense for how this works, what we want to do, how we can motivate the team in those particular directions. Next, we have key results, and this is really where the rubber meets the road with an OKR. Key results are more quantitative. They are the metrics that are behind the objective, that are measuring progress towards the goal. Now, they kind of break down our objective into milestones with specific outcomes we want to achieve, always ensuring we're tracking progress clearly. Everybody can kind of see that when we're using them well. And key results should be assigned to define accountability as well. We want to make sure people know what is expected of them. That certainly helps track progress and make sure the goal is achieved. And as we look at them, setting specific and measurable things is important because we want to know what progress is being made towards that objective. Making them very tangible, breaking objectives down into specific outcomes that we are looking to achieve is important too, because now we know what to focus on. It's helping us make decisions and prioritize work as we all make an effort to achieve the objective. And we need to make them clear. Having time-bound, kind of like the SMART goal philosophy, giving that numeric value with a deadline, like an element of that is important. And the accountability needs to be baked into it too, keeping everybody on track, particularly if they're longer term. And sometimes we might even have a few, like we can have 3 to 5 perhaps of key results that are helping us direct us towards that objective. Considering our hiking example again, let's look at the first objective that we have, reach the top of the highest peak this season. Our first key result might be achieve weekly hike durations of 10 hours. All of us, we should be hiking that much. We might want to complete 3 intermediate hikes with at least a 2,000-foot elevation, because remember, we need to climb to the highest peak. And finally, we need to make sure everybody knows the drill. 100% gear check success before each hike. We don't need to be searching for things or slowing us down as a result of that, making sure everybody's ready. These key results push us in the direction of the objective, so we see our progress along the way.
So Ryan, I have a question for you here.
Yeah.
This is for me. But when we are doing planning, a lot of times I'll say it. A lot of times we do see the objectives are not necessarily written the right way.
Aha.
But I also see sometimes where there's way too many key results and it's really hard to track. So there, I mean, when it comes to this example, there's a lot more you could kind of think through. And I wonder, do you have any advice for in the actual planning session? How do you negotiate which are the most important key results that you should be really tracking that won't overwhelm your team?
Yeah, I love this because have seen the same mistakes made, Rena, and I'm glad you're bringing it up. Where there's like KPI overload, like a key results, like
Mhm.
the key means, and we mean it when we say key. You need to pick just the select few, and it's picking those that's important. And how do you do that? There's a few things to consider. While I don't have like the one framework to do it, but I would encourage everybody to think about it this way. Um, like certainly as you are looking at your key results, check for feasibility. Like how much influence does a particular team have against this can they move the needle? If the answer is no, it should be prioritized very low. So feasibility is a big one. Also look for strategic connection. Like we want to be drawing those links. We're going to see that in a little bit too. Look for those connections, because if we say something like keep everybody hydrated, like as a key result, so okay, that's important, but it's not necessarily, that could be at any time, at any place. Like we need to be a little more specific than that. Let's try to really relate it to that objective that we are looking to achieve. So beyond that, we are always drawing those connections. We're always making sure we're right sizing them to the scope or the influence the team can have. And we are also, and my final point, Rita, I'm sure you have something to add too. I'd love to hear what you think. Don't be afraid to change them. Like even if you lock them in, like know that they can be adaptable. Like, if we're finding this thing, wait a minute, we made a bad decision here and it's not telling us the thing we want to know. It's okay. Recognize it, acknowledge it, and then find out what would be the better way to do it. It's okay to be flexible.
Yeah. So a couple things. One, when we take a look at key results here, what we like to do is we like to pressure test them a lot in the sense of, okay, like for example, achieve weekly height duration of 10 hours per week. Okay, if we achieve a weekly hike duration of 8 hours per week, does it mean that we're not going to get to our objective? So we try to, and sometimes we don't know. And so you're right. It's really also important to say, okay, this is our best guess. We don't quite know. We're going to measure it as we go and then potentially refine them. But we try to make sure that if it's not true, then are we at risk? And if the answer is yes, that usually means we're at a good key result. And if the answer makes you start to think, it's good because maybe that's not the right one to pick.
Right. Yeah, Rena, I see in chat we got a couple of questions from JV and Raj. And JV and Raj, both of you, in fact, I want to address those questions, but I'm going to hold my answer until we get to a specific point in the presentation, because I think I've got some information specifically towards both of those. So if I could ask you both to sit tight, we will knock those out when we get there. All right, so let's keep going. Time for some real talk, everybody. OKRs are a trendy topic. I want to call a duck, as they say. And that is why I think people think that deploying them in the organization is just going to fix everything. Like, we need OKRs, let's go. But you don't need a wholesale change, as I've said already. Like, we don't necessarily need the OKR, the act of deploying them isn't magic. It's the principles behind them that is really the magic that makes them powerful, and why so many organizations like the Googles and Microsofts of the world that use OKRs keep using them. Like that's they have the discipline and the systems in place to make them effective. So as we kind of like look ahead, let's focus on those principles and see where they work well and where things can go wrong, and keep our minds open to make small adjustments using these lessons to find the quickest way for us to make improvements right now, not later, but now. So as we consider that, like in that headspace, I would ask you all to think of this question just for a moment. What problem am I trying to solve? Like, what is the thing I am trying to do? And with that understanding, you can select the principles that best address your needs. So you can start to see like, aha, I see what connects here. So with that, Rina, I think we have our
Cool.
first poll, and
Yeah,
I
I
see
think
people answering already. So let's
fantastic. Yeah, Jerry just launched it. So what is your experience with OKRs? Blank slate, familiar but completely inexperienced using potentially another goal setting method, completely new relationship, actively experimenting. I feel like that one's a little bit unfair, Ryan, because you're always actively experimenting with
that
OKRs.
is true.
Yeah. Familiar but mysterious. Feel like I'm in that one.
Yeah.
OKRs are how I set strategic goals and align teams, and I use them all the time. All right, so we got people have now submitted. Only a few are at the polar opposite, so that's actually to be expected at this point. I'm not surprised to see most people have at least used OKRs. Majority are either familiar and inexperienced in using another goal setting, or they find them that they use them, but maybe haven't quite unlocked the potential yet. So we're going to end the poll. I'll share the results really quickly. You could see them as well.
Yeah, I love it. So with the kind of the heavy hitters here, we've got some individuals looking to compare their existing goal setting frameworks to OKRs and want some insights and advantages. We're definitely going to cover that. And the other being kind of familiar but mysterious. Let's look at some of those best practices and the pitfalls to see how we can make OKRs work. What those, I think the bad habits might be quite interesting to that group, Rena, like what those anti-patterns might be. All right. And I see Sonia. Sonia, thank you for your question. I see, how do we effectively align OKRs with product strategy and vision? So it's again the same slide. Everybody's thinking the same thing. I'm building up to this slide and everyone's gonna be like, the expectation's gonna be so high. So
We'll
Sonia,
get there. We'll get there.
yeah, we'll get there. And it's coming soon. I do promise you that. All right, so with our poll launched, answers received. Well done, everybody. And let's talk about best practices. What makes OKRs good as we look at them? And Rena, I kind of answered you with my question with a little bit of this. OKRs are flexible and adaptable. Like things change. We cannot plan for everything. And I would like to say, if you don't have a plan, a goal is just a wish. So let's stop telling fortunes and start setting goals. So remember, OKRs are goals that are meant to inspire action, not demotivate or be confusing. They are not wild guesses about what we might do in the future either. So if we take that approach, if we just set things that are wishes, we're not going to make progress. We're going to be less efficient. People are going to be unmotivated. Time is going to be wasted. So let's not do that. So how do OKRs help? Ryan, you're probably asking right now. So let's take it from the Harvard Business Review. They did a whole study on this stuff, and they found people who, this isn't even relative to OKRs, by the way, people who set and plan goals are 10 times more likely to achieve them. That's staggering. 10, like just simply writing them down and saying, I will do X, Y, and Z. Fantastic. So you can use OKR principles to treat goals as flexible and adaptable because the world of business is dynamic and ever changing. Write your goal down. Don't be afraid to adjust as conditions change. And the takeaway here, I think, is very simple. Just by very simply looking at the things you want to achieve or you want your team to achieve and flexing that plan to achieve them, you're going to set your teams and yourself up for greater success. So the OKR framework is your outlet, like to do this. Clearly state your objectives, define those key results, like make them key, use only 3 or 4, and make sure you're finding that connection to progress towards the objective. And it is allowing you to execute an adaptable plan by tracking those key results along the way. So, Rena, I really loved your example. If we're only hitting 8 miles or instead of 10, like, well, is that okay? Like, we're seeing some progress. Like, we've done something. Like, what is happening here? It's giving us insight that we can adjust to. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So we don't want to fall into the common trap of not having goals and failing to plan. We don't want to do that. And we can use the OKR principles in very small, simple ways to motivate us and our teams towards success. It's a a great way. All right, so now drum roll, please, Rina. So it's time. It's time for the slide.
The one that you've all been waiting
This is
for.
it. All right, so strategy. So Sonia, you were kind of asking. You specifically mentioned strategy, and we're gonna keep breaking it down. So whether it's the product perspective, the business perspective, the strategic perspective, or even down to the outputs. Like I think Raj, you were saying, like epics, features, user stories. Like let's look at all of these levels. And I'm going to try to make the connections now. But we always have to start with strategy or the strategic context. I'm going to call it that. This is where we begin. And we need that context from our leaders. Like we have to find it, go collect it, and orient to it to set the next steps. We need to understand where the opportunities rest in the market as well. Hopefully we've done a market analysis, seeing the picture. We see what constraints we operate within from the internal perspective. And with these elements, we start to build strong connections. Like that's, aha, okay. We have these goals from that our leadership has set. We have this strategic direction. I am inheriting that. I'm trying to put the pieces together, which allows me now with an OKR manifest itself as a business objective. So now I have a business objective that is informing me that with our business level OKR at its highest level should be derived from the mission and vision, right? Like we got the big high level mission and vision. That's the why. We have the strategies that the business is set, which is the what. And that's where OKRs come in. They kind of sit at the top and cascade down to different teams from here. But be aware that there can be multiple layers of business objectives. I deal, Rina, with a lot of enterprise organizations, global companies. And when you have multiple business units and product portfolios, it's not as simple, unfortunately, or clean as I show you with one. There's often layers. So just be aware. But consider this example quickly. And Rina, I don't know, who doesn't love The Office, the television show The Office? So if the regional manager of Dunder Mifflin Paper Company has an objective of becoming the most customer-centric paper supplier in the northeastern US, a branch office in Scranton, Pennsylvania, perhaps, can't influence, I should say, the whole East Coast. They can't do that. However, they can set an objective of establishing their branch as the go-to provider for paper solutions in Eastern Pennsylvania. So now you're seeing how layers of this sort of come together. Okay, so strategy informs our business objectives. Business objectives sit at the top. Next, we have our product objectives. And I think, JV, this is what you were getting at. Product objectives are very naturally come from the business objectives. And it's how our product is creating value for our user. Business objectives are about the business. Product objectives are about what the product does for the user. And product objectives are informed by and connected to that business level. So, I mean, I'm going to show you how that connection looks on the next slide as we look at an example. But that connection exists. We see the correlation. Finally, and this is Raj's question about the initiatives. We've got initiatives happening, or outputs. We can use outcomes and outputs. The initiatives, those things that we need to do, the executions that take place to drive our key results. The things that we will work on to then measure and see progress being made. We can prioritize our initiatives. Those initiatives can take the form of epics, features, and user stories, perhaps, which are the increments and activities that we work on to achieve the goal. And no, I just want to note that work as an initiative is never final. You're always iterating and improving to deliver value to your customers, which is returned as value to the business. It's like a big cycle. Because by completing the initiatives, you will deliver on your key results, and then your key results progress you towards the objectives. And as you make progress towards the objectives, you fulfill your strategy, and the cycle is complete. And so it all works together.
So Ryan, I know we talk a lot about business outcomes and product outcomes. I just want to make sure that, people are maybe not confused, but is there a difference between a product outcome and a product objective?
Aha, okay. So a product outcome and a product objective. There is a Venn diagram of the two, and there is some overlap, as I would describe it, Rena. So a product outcome being very customer centric, an outcome the customer wants to achieve is a product outcome in the product side dictionary. A product objective, very closely related to that. It's the goal we are trying to drive for the customer. So it's again very customer centric and usually orients to that product outcome as well. Like there is a relationship there.
I think that's what I'm trying to also say, that in the OKR, like OKRs are very, very often used by product teams, very similar to what we're seeing people are now calling business outcomes and product outcomes,
Mhm.
because I it's like in the end, it's what are you trying to achieve as a team? And from the business perspective, or from like what is the customer then going to experience from all of the work your team is doing in terms of how they're using the product. So they are, I don't know about like how much overlap they have, but I feel like they have a lot of overlap.
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
I have even seen them, the terminology used interchangeably. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So there is a lot of overlap. And Raj had asked a question here, Rena. He's also been told that goals must be SMART goals. However, taking it from a goal to an objective, because goals and objectives are very thin lines. I agree. Like objectives, they don't necessarily need to be smart. I have seen good objectives written that don't have a specific metric tied to them, but yet they are aspirational. Like we are going to climb the mountain, like sort of thing.
So I think what I've seen, Ryan, is again, this has to do with there's a lot of different ways for a company to run strategically. I think that's the point I was trying to make, whether or not you
Mm.
call them business objectives or business outcomes. And with SMART goals, this is a different business, I would say, I don't know, framework.
Yeah.
But a lot of people also apply it to OKRs. What you get that's SMART is, I think, really the combination between the objective and the key results. Those together could be SMART. And for those of you who don't know what SMART means, it's an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable. I think it's relatable and time bound.
I'm bound. Yep.
Or yeah, the R. It's relevant. Sorry, it's relevant.
Irrelevant. Yeah.
Yeah. So together, an objective plus the key result should equate to being smart. But I don't think you need to be smart in the objective alone.
Correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
The key results, I'm looking for something quantifiable there. The objective, I'm not necessarily looking for something quantifiable specifically. But yeah, I
Mhm.
agree with you. All right, so let's just use an example. Let's put this together real quick. And if anyone here is like me, you have some memories watching a certain coyote get outsmarted, blown up, smashed, and dropped off a cliff as he tries to capture a roadrunner for dinner. So this leads me to my inspiration for this example, the Acme Corporation, the company supplying Mr. Wile E. Coyote with his gadgets. So if we break it down and look at the Acme Corporation, our business objectives at the top, which is growing market share in the Roadrunner capture segment. So, okay, we see what we want to do from a business perspective. And remember, there may be multiple layers of business objectives, such as growing global revenue 10% for the whole company. And that example would like sit above this one in my mind. So, measuring progress towards this objective is increasing customer satisfaction and increasing brand recognition. That's what we've said for our key results. Next, we have our product objectives. And remember, product objectives are focused on the customer. Coyotes trying to catch dinner in this case. And as we set key results that tell us if we are delivering on our objective, eat freshly caught dinner every night, by measuring successful captures without malfunctions or failures, which that's a tall task in this case, and a reduction in average time to capture. Key results there. So, okay, we're making progress. So we've got the business perspective, the customer's perspective reflected. Then we have our initiatives. Those initiatives are the things that we have confidence in are going to move the needle for our key results because, we're good product managers, Rina. We've done our validation. We know it. We've got some evidence to say yes. And as we deliver these things, we measure those key results to identify if we're making progress towards the objectives, delivering on things. So it now comes back up again. So the cycle continues. Delivering on the product objectives rolls up to positive progress towards customer satisfaction and brand recognition. helping achieve our business objective. And it all ties together. Everything's connected. All right, so finally, and the last best practice that I want to talk about here is, just like anything else, objectives need a why behind them. This is how strategy feeds objectives. So back to kind of Sonia and your question that you asked earlier, this is how we are making sure that connection exists. It means we are setting the appropriate context for the objective we are working to achieve, helping to inspire and motivate and align. Like, we gotta have a why. And I like to use this, another silly example, but it's like watching children play with blocks. They build with no clear purpose in mind. The end state is jumbled and likely comes crashing down very quickly. But what if? What if we told the kids that were playing with blocks to build a skyscraper specifically, or build a base that is larger than the top to build their skyscraper? And even more, what if we told them the goal is to build a skyscraper that can stand on its own and is at least as tall as the table? The result might look like a tower, and it might stand up on its own. So if an objective is unclear and how it will be measured is unclear, the goal will be much more difficult to accomplish. Because, like, take that my children playing with blocks example. What if I use language they didn't understand by asking them something like, build the Burj Khalifa at a 1/1000th scale? It's like, oh my gosh, they don't know what that means. Some might get it, others might not, and confusion ensues. So now the goal of building a tower that stands on its own isn't well understood. We might not get the result we want. So in these situations, the team's not going to be motivated. The investment in working collaboratively and achieving a common goal will be diminished significantly. And that's where communication is key. It's not good enough to tell people why and how we will measure once. We need to do it many times. Remind them continuously. This is the goal, and this is how we're measuring, and this is what we want to achieve. Because take this statistic as proof that communication is the linchpin of successful goal setting, not just with OKRs, but the most successful companies have a 28% higher communication intensity measured by the number of communication channels used, and use OKR check-ins more often than a comparison group. So we got to be checking in. Like, we got to be communicating that regularly. And it needs to be repeated and reinforced with rigor. Make sure we do that. And you know who plays a big role in motivating teams, Rina? Product leaders.
The leaders, yes.
Product managers and product leaders. We have so many relationships across the organization. Gosh, think about the power we have. I mean, we don't always recognize it, but people listen to us. So let's be communicators and communicate why behind a lot of things that we're doing at every possible opportunity. You're going to feel like you sound like a broken record, but that's the name of the game. We see the big picture. Let's help others see it too. That's what we need to do. So whether you're using OKRs or not, communication and tracking progress is critical.
Yeah. So Ryan, to that point, and this is kind of important. I learned early on that, especially as a leader, sometimes you have so much information, it's hard to unknow what you know. And so you don't always realize when other people around you might be lacking that context. And so somebody once told me that as a leader, it's actually your job to communicate and repeat yourself the same way that Billy Joel plays Piano Man, because you're doing it for the fans and you want to make sure everybody knows how to sing along. So yeah, overly communicate and don't get caught up in feeling like you're always repeating yourself, because that's actually your job.
That is my new favorite analogy, Rina. Billy Joel singing Piano Man.
There you go.
That's awesome. All right, so Jerry, let's open our next poll. We have our second poll all. So tell us, which best practice would benefit you most that we talked about here?
Great. So we've now launched the poll. So the best practices are aligning OKRs with strategy, flexible and adaptable objectives, clear, consistent communication, cascading objectives, or measuring tangible results. And Sonia, I see the question as well about key results and KPIs. We'll answer that one at the end in Q&A. All right, I'm seeing some answers come in. Okay, I mean, not surprising. A majority are coming in for aligning OKRs with strategy. Um,
Yeah, I would agree. That isn't surprising either. And we can do that with any goal setting framework. Like, and it always kills me, Reina, how easy it is to understand. Like, I could go to an organization and ask five people, what's the corporate strategy? And I might get five different answers. And think about how easy it would be just to align to ask some questions. That's what my encouragement would be for everybody listening today. Like, just ask. Go talk to your leader. Find out what is your strategy. What are goals are you trying to achieve?
Oh man, if you are in a company where you might suspect that that is the culture, just know that there is a soft way to have that conversation, even with your leader, because nobody wants to then say, "Oh, I don't know." So usually, it's probably best to do it in a safe one-on-one setting and say, "Hey, I'm having a hard time figuring this out myself. Can we work on this together?" That usually puts people in a less defensive situation, because honestly, this is something that I think 10 out of 10, when we go in and we do consulting with companies, I want to say 99, if not 100%, have this problem. So do not, it's okay. You're not alone if that's the case in your company, but it's important to start having that conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll sharing results. And yeah, about half have said aligning OKRs with strategy is the best practice to benefit. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I like even cascading, there's an alignment element to that too. Like it's so much of this, I guess what we're talking about is comes down to alignment with both strategy and even cross-functionally. All right, so now the I guess if we haven't had fun yet, so we're gonna have fun now. Let's talk about when good OKRs go bad. So the first thing I want to introduce here, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see with OKRs is that people focus on outputs because outputs are easy. Those are like those increments or initiatives that I was talking about before, and that's causes us to lose sight of the outcomes that we're working on to achieve. But let me try to define what I mean by these things quickly first. So, if we define the difference between outcomes and outputs, imagine you're hosting a dinner party. I know, Rena, you and Dimitri love to cook. So imagine you're hosting a dinner party and you've been preparing for days. You've got your recipes, your ingredients, a killer playlist, maybe a game or two, and the meal prep's done. The night of the party, your guests arrive and the festivities kick off, and it goes great. Afterwards, you sit down and you do some analysis, and you to answer the question: was my dinner party a success? So we are product managers after all, and my wife always rolls her eyes at me when I want to make a spreadsheet for everything. I have to say that, but you start by making a list, and that list, okay, starts with you have two columns. Column was how might we measure success for a dinner party, and you write outputs and outcomes. And as you look at the things on your list, you start sorting. There is the outcomes column and the outputs column, and to distinguish the difference between the two, you ask, is this a result, the outcome, or was it part of the work of hosting an output? So you see the examples on the slide. You can see the difference. What if I measured on how hot the meal was? What if I served boiling hot lava that it tasted terrible? Nobody would want to come back, but it was hot. We did it, Rena. It was hot. But we want an outcome. Did the guests have like it? Did they have a second serving? Would they come back in the future? So you can kind of see the difference here on
Can I
how.
can I say, Ryan? Okay,
Yeah.
so I do not want it said that we don't care about outputs, because we do.
Yes.
We just care about outputs in the context of driving outcomes. I think
That's
that's
it. We
that's
need
it.
them. They're
Yeah.
so important. We couldn't host a good dinner if we didn't have outputs, or build a meaningful product if we didn't have good outputs. So important. We generate outputs to create outcomes. But when we measure ourselves, the meaningful measurement is the outcome. That's what's important. So let's contextualize to OKRs quickly, not silly dinner party examples. And let's just call this the do's and don'ts, if we will. So notice how the output-based OKRs you see on the slide are not results-focused. They're all about activities. The outcome-focused are different. The objectives are aspirational and motivate action towards delivering a great experience. The key results are aligned and track my progress towards achieving the objective. So as we use OKRs, ask yourself the question, is this an activity or a result? And if it's an activity, it's an output. And we can switch the conversation by challenging ourselves. What will finishing this task do? What is that result or impact we want to achieve? That's what we're looking for. So this is a pet peeve of mine, and I know it's I think others feel this way as well about OKRs. But as we consider using OKRs, we need to be very clear. What are we using them for? Trying to use them across different use cases can blur the lines. And this is what I mean by use cases. Are we measuring the business? Are we measuring the product? Are we measuring the team? Or are we measuring individual performance? And often we confuse these things. And I think OKRs work best when they're focused on the company and product goals. They align and inspire teams, and they are not well used for individuals. So while promoting an environment of collaboration and creativity is what they're geared towards, as soon as we switch to an individual, we lose a little bit of that magic. So conversely, personal performance management focuses on individual growth, not aligning a team and achieving company goals. It's usually private between an individual and their manager and not transparent or visible like OKRs are. They're often more realistic and achievable career and development goals rather than ambitious like an OKR is. In other words, OKRs is a performance metric or like a personal performance development thing. Not so good. And we can take that lesson from Spotify. Spotify tried doing this, and they very famously ditched OKRs as a personal performance measurement in 2013, citing it slowed them down, didn't add value, and focused the individual too much on the how and distracted from the why, which is what we just talked about.
Yeah, Ryan, you said it at the very beginning. Objectives are supposed to be aspirational. They're not always going to be achieved. In fact, I think the popular idea was if you achieve 80%, you probably said it right. But from a personal perspective, especially like I'm type A, I don't like achieving 80%. I want 110, right? So what ends up happening a lot is people who want to get 100 won't really get that aspirational part, and they'll start driving objectives down to something that's more of an achievable. And it's not necessarily going to move the needle or inspire a whole team. It's just going to help that one person.
Yeah, and Rina, I think we're cut from the same cloth in that type A regard. Like it's demoralizing. I don't want to be demoralized. I want to be motivated.
Yeah.
It's how things should work. All right, so finally, let's look at some, I'm calling these the deadly sins of OKRs. We've kind of touched on these a little bit as we've gone along, but OKRs, if there's no alignment, the OKRs can't stand alone. It just doesn't work as well. They must connect, cascade, and align and make them transparent and public for best results. We also don't want a leader in our organization to unilaterally dictate OKRs for all teams. Teams should have some level of empowerment to give input into those objectives rather than just being told you are going to achieve this. That's just going to promote buy-in and that investment that we need to inspire people and motivate them to action. We also don't want them to be vague. They need the why. They should be inspiring and easy for people to understand. And they should really hear that why over and over. You should be Billy Joel and Piano Man. So we also don't want to make them too rigid. I think this is one of the first things I said, Rina, to your question, but let's make them flexible. Let's adjust as things change. We cannot predict the future. Why should we expect our OKRs to do the same? So make sure you are continually checking in and reporting progress and communicating that progress across the team, and we'll be more successful as a result. So as we lead the way with OKRs, and if we reflect just for a moment, OKRs are more than a trendy topic. We can use them in accessible ways. Use the principles, not the process. And those things kind of manifest themselves as leaders. It's up to us to define the connection between goals and strategy. Let's give people the why. But defining isn't often just alone isn't good enough. Communicate it often. So we also want to empower and measure our teams. If the saying you do what you measure is true, OKR philosophy proves it. Let's define outcomes and measure our teams to achieve them. So we look at that. And then finally, be flexible, be adaptable. just because OKRs feel foreign or you already have another goal setting mechanism in place, you can try these principles in small ways. I mean, why not set an objective for your team with a few key results and see how it goes? That's simple. Why not assess your current goal and see its own connection to strategy? That would be wonderful. Or why not define outcomes you can begin measuring right now? Let's look for those things to just be in a better place than we are today. With that, Rena,
Yeah.
it's time for Q&A.
So one of the things that we didn't mention, Ryan, that I did want to bring up is the cadence and timing. Most organizations use OKRs as part of their quarterly planning process. And so a key point here is if you're using I don't know what your rhythm is at your organization, you can adapt OKRs to that rhythm. Just make sure do not skip the retro. Like anything else, this process only gets better if you iterate on it, and you will not be good at it the first time. You won't even be good at it maybe the 10th time, but you're going to get better. And that's the whole point here is you're going to get better. And when you get better, your whole company gets better.
Yeah, and a mentor once told me, Rena, don't let perfect get in the way of better. And I've taken that to
Oh,
heart.
yes.
And I think that holds true with OKRs as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Now we're going to head into Q&A. We have time for just a few questions. First, I want to take Sonia's question, and she asked, how are key results similar or different from KPIs? The examples here, when we were showing the different key results, sounded like KPIs to her. Ryan, how are key results and KPIs different?
Aha, okay. So KPIs are a specific thing. I want to talk about that first. So like we have often as a business, we have lots of metrics we track to measure ourselves, lots of metrics. So all KPIs are metrics. All metrics aren't KPIs. KPIs are just the most important metric for the business kind of like holistically to look at and track. So we'll have a business level KPI. We might have a product level KPI. Like we're looking at those things. Key results similarly do track important things, yes, but they are very clearly connected to an objective. Like we are, because KPIs, if I were to draw some contrast, I might say a KPI is helping us understand kind of like the health or vitality of our business, where a key result is telling us what progress is being made. So might look at a KPI, and if I see it go red, I can start problem solving against that. Where a key result just says I might not hit my aspirational objective, but I'm seeing the progress that is happening there.
Can I give a slightly different answer to this?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's different kinds of, so KPIs, key performance indicator, should indicate something, and Ryan's right, usually the health. Usually you have KPIs for the business, which tend to be lagging indicators. Business KPIs are often things like revenue, profitability, but product KPIs can have some leading indicators. I mean, would you consider churn? Right, could be
Churn might be more lagging, like we're looking, think about a product KPI more like a user behavior, like you're seeing, yeah.
So those KPIs really shouldn't change much I mean, they might change a little bit as you refine them, but they're very similar to what we call like North Star metrics. Usually you have one North Star metric, and then you have some signals in your business. Whereas key results are, if you want to call it like the North Star metrics or the KPIs of that objective only, not of the larger business or product that you're working on. So they're not so key results can change and they're related to that objective. KPIs really should be mostly stable in time. Okay, so Ryan, what happens if the company is I'm going to get there, but one more question. What happens if the company does not have a goal setting process currently? What advice do you have for product managers in that scenario?
Oh, yes. Okay. So my advice for product managers in this scenario are start small. It is easy to get overwhelmed because, and this is how I suggest starting small. Focus on your scope of control first. Like, okay, if you are a product leader managing product managers, set a goal for your team, an objective. Like, let's see how we can make this work for us here and you can start testing and iterating on yourself. And then as you learn what works with the culture of your organization, with the nature of your business, you can start as like you're like the pilot, you're the test bed. You can start advocating across other teams to see if you can influence cultural change across the organization. So I'm always looking, if you're a product manager and an individual contributor in the organization, like why not start setting goals for your product? And you can start communicating those goals to all the stakeholders that you have and see if you can build a little bit of a cultural change there too. So start small. I think that would be my one piece of advice.
Yeah, that, and again, the retro, use a retro to get better.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. All right. So for those of you who joined us today, I hope this was a very insightful conversation about how you can be more strategic at your company. Another way for you to be even more strategic is by taking our team assessment. This team assessment has been built on I think we've been doing optimizations and consulting for over a decade. So we used dozens of engagements to come up with a survey that product leaders and even product managers can take to establish what is the current maturity of your product management team and organization. This survey takes less than 10 minutes to complete, and you get a report delivered to your inbox. And you can even get a free 30-minute consultation with us to go over your results in more detail. Next slide. Our next webinar is happening at the end of this month, and it is another take two, a comeback on getting real product management stuff done. It's going to be hosted by Dean Peters and Joe Golly. It's happening at the end of this month, like I said, Wednesday, July 31st. Here's a QR code for you to register. This is great. We constantly are changing this webinar because ChatGPT and other LLMs keep changing. So if you are interested in how to use generative AI in your work as a product manager, this is a great webinar for you. And if you want to increase your skills, we also have our publicly available courses. Today, we are offering a very special discount. It's part of our summer sale at Productside. Use the code OKR500 to get $500 off any of our live instructor-led courses, whether it's digital, product management with Kenny, that goes over, actually has OKRs and KPIs and other metrics you can use to turbocharge your digital products. We also have outcomes and OKRs included in our optimal product management course. That is, the next one is happening August 6th with Dean Peters. And agile product management for those of you who are looking to be strategic leaders on an agile team. That is a great course for you. This code should work with any of our instructor-led courses. And with that, again, hope you learned something. I always do. Ryan, you've been a fantastic host.
Thank you.
Yeah, and for those of you who love our webinars, subscribe to our content, bring a friend, and be sure to share this webinar recording with anybody you think might benefit from a good refresher on OKRs. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.